this whole Catholicism adventure thing, religion adventure, has been a whipsaw back and forth, a pendulum swinging with increasing ferocity. Seems like there's more weight to it, and I guess that might come from more knowledge, more thought. My wife and I have spent a great deal of time talking about the subject, and initially it felt kind of like dabbling. Oh, this is an idea. Okay, kind of neat. And then that idea grew into, well, we kind of need to go to a church to see what it's like to make an informed decision. That makes sense. Okay, so we go to a Latin mass. All right, that's kind of neat. I'm into that. That's cool. Then we start looking into the history of the church, the Catholic Church, and learning about this and learning about that, and it all seems interesting. And there's certainly benefits to it. There's a lot of people that get benefit from being part of an organized religion, and there's a lot of people that say organized religion is not the way to go for this reason or that reason. And look at all the harm that organized religion has done. Yeah, but look how much good it's done. And you've got charitable works, and you've got this, and you've got the scientific achievements that the Catholic Church can be proud of, and people like Tolkien and G.K. Chesterton and Thomas Aquinas and lots of people. Lots. I don't need to sit here and name 50 different people or something. But I had this moment last night when I was praying the rosary where I stopped and went, what am I doing? What is this? I had decided to pray the rosary, having never done that before, for all of Lent. And thus far, I've done that except for last night because I was. The way it works, if you're unfamiliar, is you go through, you've got the crucifix, and you say, like, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And like you start at you say the Apostles' Creed, which is like, I believe in Jesus Christ, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and the Catholic Church, and you kind of go through this whole thing. Well, I've been doing it, aside from once or twice in English, all in Latin, and that means most of the time I'm just listening to it because I don't know all of the stuff in Latin. I don't read Latin. I mean, I can kind of dink along, but I don't really know it. But I have memorized, but pretty close, damn near, the Hail Mary in Latin. So I can follow along. I've been listening to this one by Cardinal Burke, who's outside of Chicago or Minneapolis or something. I'm not sure exactly where he's from, somewhere in the Midwest, North Midwest. And so I go through, and it's about 20 odd minutes, 20, 23 or something is the video that I found on YouTube. So I listen and I recite what I know. But I was midway through the first, what is called a decade. It's a section of 10 beads. Why is it 10? I don't know. I'll get to that in a moment. And I had this very clear question pop into my mind of what am I doing right now? What is this? And it wasn't in a accusatory, oh, this is bad, I'm wasting my time. It wasn't in the way that Protestants sometimes say, oh, praying the rosary is the vain repetition that Jesus talks about, the Bible talks about. I can see how it could be that way, but I think with so many things, it really does depend on where your heart is at. And I think that there are certainly people that have prayed the rosary with a very compassionate, well meaning, humble heart, and they are focused on their friends and their family, and they're thinking about how Mary could intercede on their behalf, whether you believe in that or not. This person is doing it in that way. And I think there's other people that are just doing it kind of by rote, like, oh, I'm just kind of going through the thing because it's what I'm supposed to do, I guess. I don't know that you're supposed to pray the rosary in the Catholic Church. I don't think it's a thing like you're supposed to partake of the Eucharist. You're supposed to go to Mass. I don't think it's a you're supposed to like that. But I had this clear question pop into my mind of, what am I doing right now? What is this? Where did this come from? And there's historical precedent for the rosary. Oh, people point to the Jews and how they would say the Psalms, and this there's the priests that have the liturgy of the hours, where each day they have various prayers that they're consecrating every hour of the day to Christ. Okay, all right, that all sounds dandy. But again, how did I end up here doing this, and why am I doing it? And more specifically to the rosary, why is it this way? It was a relatively recent pope. I don't think the most recent before Francis, but maybe the one before that, that added the luminous mysteries. There's the sorrowful and the wonderful and the I don't, there's a few different ones. There's four different sets of mysteries, and the most recent one is the luminous mysteries. It focuses on Christ's work and miracles, and the miracles, the wedding of Canaan. Okay, well, clearly things can be added to this just when somebody wants to. The Pope, I guess. There's this prayer, there's that prayer that they say. Why those prayers? Why not other ones? Why 10 beads per decade? Why not 9? Why not 12? What actually is this? And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it can get misused like so many things. But for me, the feeling that followed that, what am I doing, was this sense of God looking at me the way that a parent might look at his child, and he's watching his son go about doing something, trying to figure something out, work on some blocks or something. He's just not able to get this thing to stack. He keeps on bumping into it because he's a little kid, like, I don't know, a year or something old. He just doesn't quite have the dexterity and the motor skills to do what he's clearly trying to do. He's trying to put this thing there, and he's really focused on it, but he just can't quite get it. And that father would look at his son with nothing but compassion and kindness and a slight amount of amusement of, oh, you can't quite get it, and that's really cute that you're trying, and it's really neat that you're trying, and it'll be so rewarding for you and me as your father if you get this right, and once you do, and oh yeah, you got it, you stacked it, you did it, and it's amazing. And the feeling was God looking at me the way that that father would look at his son, and this idea came to me of, you're trying. You're trying to find me, and that's a way. You can find me through the rosary. That's a way. You can also find me other ways. You don't have to pray the rosary. It's not. I've never made this a requirement. Sure, you can find me there. You could find me in a bowl of oatmeal. You could find me while you're on the toilet staring at the paint on the wall. God can be found in, I truly think, anywhere. Are there places where it's easier to find God? I do think so. I think you're more likely to feel a closeness to God and a presence of God in a place like a cathedral, or in nature, or while listening to a gorgeous piece of music, as opposed to hearing the sounds of construction, or your neighbor's leaf blower, or a car screeching down the road, or a plane. You get my point. It's not that God is only to be found in certain places. I think he can be found anywhere. And then on the heels of this thought was the image of a forest, and there was a whole bunch of people that had walked a pathway, and that pathway was clearly well trodden. It was, billions, literal billions of people had walked that way. And you could see their footprints of them pounded into the dirt, and it was like I said, well trodden. That was a clear pathway. It's a clear way to go. And I saw that. Oh, okay. Yeah, but isn't there something in like all the stories about not taking that path? Something about going into the part of the forest where it seems to be dangerous. Isn't there the story and the mythic idea that you have to go where you least want to go to find the thing that you need? You've got to face your dragons. You got to fight these demons, and to find those demons and to find those dragons, you've got to go to the place where everybody isn't. Everybody isn't hanging out where the dragons are. Everybody isn't hanging out where it's strange and wild and untamed. And I thought, I don't think that I have to go that well-trodden path to find God. And another part of this equation, this idea, was God was there, everywhere. He was in the forest. He was the forest. He was a part of the forest. It's not that he was the forest, but he was in the forest. He was beyond the forest. So You can find me anywhere. I am here is kind of what I was feeling. Was that God speaking to me? I don't know. Some people would say that. Other people would say, oh, it's just the culmination of a bunch of ideas smashing into each other at once and it kind of coming to you in this one particular moment. I can see it both ways. And I think that's part of the challenge here is that I can see so much of this stuff through the lens of a rational mind with my left side of my brain, the left side of my brain, that my left hemisphere, the calculating, the logical, the reasoning side. But I can see it through the right side too, the creative, interesting, mystical, wonderful, awe-inspiring, beyond comprehension side, that there are things that are beyond our ability to comprehend. There will always be mysteries in life, is another thing that I've been thinking about. And does that point to God? Some would say yes. Some would say it just points to deeper mysteries, that there's always new depths to explore. You figure out exactly how to take clay out of the ground and turn it into a mug and fire it and put it in a kiln and turn it into a hard mug, and you've got a mug that's suitable for holding coffee. Cool. That begets new mysteries, and that begets new mysteries, and this and that. It goes and it goes and it goes. There was a point in time where the idea of people making diamonds was insane. It's just unthinkable. And now we can make diamonds like it's no big deal. Right? You have to have the right technology and the right stuff to do it, but it's not hard. Or it is. Get it? Another thing that my wife and I specifically have been struggling with is that there's some pretty strict rules when it comes to what a man and a wife should and should not do when they're in their bedroom. I'm not going to be crude here. I'm not going to take this anywhere beyond PG, but we're not super thrilled that a entity thinks that it knows exactly how we should interact with each other. Not in all the details, but in some specific details that matter a fair bit. And the last time that the church released an official thing on that idea was in 1968. And that's problematic. That's extremely problematic because, well, one, that's a long time ago, but two, that was 3 years before the world went through a monumental shift. The US went off the gold standard in 1971. I mean, you can look at chart after chart after chart after chart on WTFhappenedin1971.com, and you can see how things changed drastically. So the idea of having a family and being able to care for that family and live off of a single income from one provider was drastically different 50 odd years ago. Well, we don't live in that world anymore, but the rules are still the same. That's a problem. That's a big problem. And this reminds me of something that I listened to in a book. It's a part of a series. There's a bunch of different books that cover different religions, and this one was about Christianity, read by Ben Kingsley. And it's a real kind of quick overview of the history of Christianity. But at one point, it's talking about Russian Orthodoxy and how during the time of the Soviet Union, the Orthodox Church was being, I might have the details mixed up here, but I believe what it was saying is people were criticizing the Russian Orthodox Church for doing things that they didn't agree with, these outsiders. And basically what this one individual said, according to a historian, I think I'm getting this right, this is clearly it's some element of telephone here. He said something along the lines of, if you were here and your concern was to save your church, you would probably do some of the things that we have done as well. And he went on to give this analogy of being stuck in traffic. And if the church is everybody else that's in traffic and they're all going in a direction, but you're not going very fast, and you're hoping that it goes in a certain direction, you can do a lot more and you can cover a lot more ground if you take your car and you go off on some side roads. Yeah, you might run into some dead ends and you realize, okay, well, that's not a way to go. You're going to discover more things, you're going to see more stuff. And you can apply this to the individual. He was at the time, I believe, saying this in regards to the Russian Orthodox Church, in that was the sole car going off and kind of doing its own thing because that's what it had to do to make it work. Whereas all of the rest of the Orthodox Church, the Greek and the Coptic and the whatever, all the rest that was not in Russia, they were kind of doing their thing together. And Russia had to kind of do its own thing because Soviet Russia was a thing and they had to do what they had to do to survive and maybe make some sacrifices here and make some amendments there. And like, look, we're just trying to keep our church intact and we don't want it to fade into non-existence. And so, yeah, we have to kind of figure out how to navigate this arena. We kind of saw this to some degree when COVID happened. A lot of churches had to do things that they normally wouldn't have done and they didn't like to do. And I wasn't a part of any church at the time, so I kind of heard about this anecdotally, so I don't know the details of it all. But to some degree, there were things that churches had to do. Sorry, I've got this cord that I'm just realizing is kind of twisted up here. And they had to do things in ways that they otherwise might not have wanted to do, or in many cases did not want to do. And certain governments, depending on which state you were in and which country you're in, said, oh, you can't hold gatherings and you've got to, or you can only hold your gatherings at this time of day or in this particular way. And you've got to have X windows open. So in this, the rules were all over the place. Make of that what you will, whether you agree with it or whether you're not, or whether you don't. You cannot deny that changes were implemented and some people didn't like those changes. But they went along with them anyways because it was maybe the choice between we don't have any service or we do. This is all to say that there is some very clear downsides to organized religion in following a religion. And I wonder how many of the people that call themselves Catholic, of the 1 point whatever it is, 1.2, 1.3 billion, how many of them are Catholic to a T? 100% through and through. They do all of the things exactly. Does the Pope even do all the things exactly? Do all of the cardinals? It seems like the answer would be unquestionably no. There might be some individuals that do it all, but boy, most? No way, not a chance. 50% seems highly unlikely. 1%? I don't know. Apparently, only a third of Catholics even believe in the Eucharist the way that the Catholic Church teaches it. So, what do you do with that? Something that my wife and I have known is that if we were to join the Catholic Church, there would be things, specifically the stuff about what a man and wife cannot or can do behind closed doors, that we have said we cannot abide by some of that. There are certain things and certain nuances to that we have to be the ones to make the judgment call on this, because the church cannot know what is best for every single individual. Can it know? And I do think that it can. So let me try this again. Can the church know what is good for, how do I say this? Can the church have an idealized version of individuals and families and then set out rules for what that idealized family and individuals looks like? Yeah, of course. Absolutely. That's not that much different than a gym saying our ideal athlete that comes to the Rocky Mountain CrossFit gym does this. If you're a guy, you wear these kind of clothes when you're at the gym. If you're a gal, you wear these kind of clothes. We prefer these colors. Other colors are acceptable. These other colors are not acceptable. You eat these kind of foods. You buy from these brands. It just goes and goes and goes. How many of those CrossFit people would be doing all of that stuff, every single piece of that puzzle? Some, sure. Some would be like, oh, yeah. And there would be a point of pride in that. Pride. According to Bishop Barron and certain other people, like Lucifer, not that he's a person, pride is the worst sin. It's what led to humanity's downfall, according to the Bible, in regards to Adam and Eve, thinking we know better than Christ. We know better. We can become more knowledgeable or equal to God. And that's what led to sin and all the rest, and the reason that God had to come down and become a man and be crucified and etc. Not to dismiss that, but if you're aware of any of this is, I don't need to go through it all. So pride's a big deal. It's a big problem. Well, there's a certain amount of pride in saying I can figure it out and I can go my own way, but there's also a certain amount of pride that says I know that this walk with this church is correct. How can I completely humbly go, this is the right church. This is the right place for me. There's some amount of pride there. And at the same time, how can the church, in full humility and in grace and good, clear conscience, say, we know what is right for Dell. We know what is right for Bob. We know what is right for Jane. That's pretty bold. It's pretty bold. I do think that there are certain things that apply to all people. Like getting proper nutrition, whatever that means to you, is a good thing. Proper nutrition for this person over here that is allergic to peanuts doesn't include peanuts. Certainly does not. Peanuts is going to kill that person. But it seems like in that kind of instance, in the church would go, well, you just got to trust God. Okay. I've heard people that take that whole trust God thing so far that they say, yeah, we don't even lock our doors. We just trust God. Do you trust that God has given you the sense of reason to make decisions and the faculty to think? Because I do. I trust that God gave me a brain to use. So I don't think that if I go, chewing razor blades is probably not a good idea. Oh, that's prideful. Well, okay. Yeah, I guess through a certain lens, that's one way to look at it. But at the same time, I think that there's something to being reasonable, it continually boils down to the intention. And I said something that apparently resonated with my wife. I said something that other night along the lines of, I think it's Alexander Solzhenitsyn that said that the line between good and evil, or the border between good and evil, runs down the center of every man's heart. And I said, if that's true, then I think that's where the church should be built, right on that border. You might say, well, why would you want to build it on the border? Wouldn't you want to build the church fully on the good? No. And here's why. Because you want to have a foot in the bad. You've got to stay in contact with your shadow self and with the people that are still stuck in there. If you are fully of the good and you're never in touch with the other side, there's a lot of people that are going to need your help and need reaching out to and need proselytizing and need charity that you're just never going to come into contact with. If you're fully in the bad, then you're some sort of evil, rotten church, and that's no good either. So I think it needs to be right down the middle. You need to be able to invite those people into your life. I'm talking about on an individual level. And you also need to be able to go, oh, wait, not you. That's a little bit more than I can handle right now. You need to be able to go, these are good things. These are people I want to surround myself with. These are people that will help me. They'll aid me. They're compassionate. These are humble people. But boy, having the discernment to know where that all comes from. or not necessarily where it all comes from, because it all, I guess everything comes from God, but having the discernment to know who's good, who's bad, who's going to help you, who's going to hold you back. It takes time, it takes thoughtful consideration. So on that note, thoughtful meditation, thoughtful consideration, prayer, etc., all that. I have this rosary. I got it from runewoodrosaries.com, established 2022. It's a fairly new company apparently. And I was looking for masculine rosaries, and I like it. It's fairly light, and I think I'm going to make my own rosary because I do like certain aspects of the idea of the rosary. I like the idea of taking some time and not interacting with your phone. I know I said that I was listening to that video, and I was listening to it, but I'm not interacting with my phone while I'm doing this. I'm not pulling up other stuff. I'm not browsing around. I was listening to the video. And let me see if I can find this image that I sent my wife. I thought, I'm going to try something the next time I pray the rosary. What I'm going to try and do is go through it. Let's see. I'm going to open this image without showing anything that is important. Okay, that'll do it. That's fine. All right, there we go. Well, weird noise. I think a bug just hit a light or something. Okay, anyhow. So this is the idea. And let me zoom in here. So it might be kind of hard to see what's going on here, but this is the crucifix down here. You've got that. Then you've got the first, what's considered the Our Father bead. Then you've got 3 Hail Marys. Then you've got the next Our Father bead. Then you've got this, I don't know, and sometimes it's called a miraculous medal, if it is, and that's a whole thing. Like, there's so much of this stuff to Catholicism, which is on one hand kind of neat, I guess. It's kind of cool, the tradition on all that, the history. And then you've got, so you would do these various prayers leading up to this, and then you would contemplate on the first mystery, and then you go through 10 Hail Marys, and you'd say the Fatima prayer. Why there? I don't know. If there's no bead for it, why not? I don't know. Oh, okay. And then you've got another Our Father bead, and then you focus on the next mystery, and then you go through, or you focus on the next mystery, then you do the Our Father prayer, then you do another 10 Fatima, focus on the next mystery, Our Father prayer, 10, so on and so forth until you go through the whole thing. Okay, and then once you finish up, there's a few other prayers, some other prayer with Mary, I whatever. Okay, so my idea is, okay, let's change this. I'm going to see how I feel doing this. I'm going to start with the rose, or the crucifix, and that's the declaration of faith, I'm calling it. And that's you saying why you're a Christian. It's kind of taking the whole Apostles' Creed. It's what this means to you. And the idea here is that you're not doing this by repetition. It's not a reciting of, oh, I say the exact same thing each time. No, the idea is to get you to think. It's to get you to think. Think today. Be thankful. Why are you a Christian? Why are you doing this? So that's the declaration of faith. Then the different Our Fathers are what I'm referring to as a purifying prayer. I kind of threw this together. I don't know if I like the terminology there, but the idea is that the first point here, right here before the 1, 2, 3, is the first thing that comes to your mind, that where you made a mistake between the last time that you did this and this time. Something where you erred. You're asking for forgiveness. You're asking for help. It's kind of a coming clean between you and God. Here's an area that I screwed up. I'm not happy about this thing. I got angry. I spoke in a harsh tone, more so than I meant to. I lashed out. Whatever. For me, I say anger because that's the most common thing where I struggle. And then these 3 beads here, 1, 2, 3, would be thanks. Something that my wife and I do almost exclusively when we pray is we give thanks. We almost never ask for things. Like, basically never. Maybe twice since we've called ourselves Christians. Maybe her a couple more times, I think she said, but it's in like the low double digits, if that. For me, I think it's like 3 things. I try to keep it exclusively, like almost entirely to thanks. It's just kind of a thing that I do. Because I feel like God's going to give me what He's going to give me, and I am thankful more than anything for life itself. So you've got thanks for family, whether that's just you and somebody that you know, whether it's found family or actual family, people, your parents. Thank you for putting me on the planet. The next thing is for health, because it can always be worse. Even if you're capable of giving thanks for your health, it could be worse. It could be worse. And then wealth, whatever that means to you. If that's you've got 2 pennies to scrape together, or you've got a bajillion dollars and you don't know what to do with to help out, you're giving thanks for that. And then again, with these purifying, or the purifying prayer, it'd be another thing or the same thing. Like maybe it's the exact same thing each time. It's like, I apologize for that time that I got upset and flipped a guy off in road rage, and the same thing, upset, road rage, flipped the guy off, same thing. That's the thing that keeps on coming to my mind, and it's eating at me, and I want to get this out. I want to cleanse my soul of this thing, so I'm bringing this to you, whatever it is. There's not there's not a pattern. It could be 3 of the same thing, and oh yeah, that's right, I did that other thing, and while you're going through this, you remember something else. Okay, and then this medal is the intention setting. It's like, why are you doing this particular series here? Why are you doing all of this? I'm specifically doing this because I want to come closer to God, because I want to take a moment and give thanks. It's been a really wonderful week, and some things happened. I got married. I was able to see my parents, because when I didn't think like I was going to, I thought that storm was going to prevent us from seeing each other, or they got the safe travel, whatever. The intention, that's between you and God. Like, I'm not saying how this needs to go. I'm doing this maybe one time ever. Just giving a rundown. Again, this is kind of a chronicle of my journey through this. And then the decades, each of these are thanks. And it's thanks for things as simple as it's the first thing that comes to your mind. Thank you for paint. I'm thankful that we have paint, because with paint we get to have wonderful art, and I get to cover my walls. Then you move to the next one. Thank you for painters. I'm a terrible house painter, and I'm glad that I'm able to hire people that are really good at that. And then you move on to the next one. That makes you, it's kind of like a word association, sort of a stream of consciousness. Thank you for ladders. Ladders are helpful. I have a ladder. It's good to have a ladder. I've used it many times. And thank you for the person. I don't even know. I'm kind of curious who that was. It's to get you to think. See, to get you to think. Maybe jot something down there. Who invented ladders? That's interesting. Oh, okay. We're going to come back to that. Cool. Thank you for the ability to think. Thank you. And I know I've thanked you for that one a bunch of times, but boy, I'm glad that I can think and ponder things and write down notes. Thank you for the ability to write stuff. Writing's super useful. Boy, human history would look a heck of a lot different if we didn't know how to write. Thank you for, you just slipped out of my hand. Anyhow, that's the idea, is you just go around giving thanks, and then you get to kind of to a sort of a reset is once you get to one of those Our Father beads. It kind of brings you back to something that you apologize for. It could be something from 10 minutes ago. It could be something from 12 years ago. I'm still so sorry for that thing that I did 12 years ago when I shoved that kid when I was in high school, and I shoved him into the wall. I still feel super bad about that. And that was the sign that I clearly had some anger issues, and I this never happened to me. I'm just making a thing up. I've never, I kind of pushed some hooples because they were trying to steal, but yeah, anyhow. And then you go back into the things, and then you go back around, and then you end on the intention setting thing, and you kind of set your intention, I guess, for, I don't know, I'm thinking of this right now for the rest of your day and week until the next time that you do this. And there you go. Yeah. And that's what I'm going to do the next time I pray the rosary, and see how it goes and see how I feel, and I'll report back. This whole thing's been a trip.